I typically put it in the, I was about to say denominator, the bottom. I don't really, but you could put it up here if you wanted to, okay? All right, sine is O over H. Let's write SOHCAHTOA right here. All right, and so we have the opposite side, which is 5, right? Opposite from the theta, and then the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. And so we need to do Pythagorean theorem to find the adjacent side. Now, the question or the direction says sketch the triangle and find the other two. So since I gave you sine, you're going to be looking for cosine and tangent. Okay, so I'm just going to write that so I don't forget. All right, so we need to do Pythagorean theorem. So that's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We know our a or our b. It doesn't matter which one you call the 5. And we know the 7. Does everybody see that? I feel like that's one mistake some of us made, was we put the 7 in for a or b, but 7 has to be the c since it's the hypotenuse. So a squared plus 25 equals 49, and then we subtract. All right, so a squared equals 24. Now, here's where a lot of us went wrong. 24 can simplify. So we need to find the perfect square that goes into 24, the largest perfect square, and it's 4. So 4 times 6. So when we simplify 4, the square root of 4 is 2, and then 6 stays. Okay, so knowing how to reduce or simplify your radicals is very important. So that might be where some of us messed up. So if you wrote it down on your own paper, hopefully you did, let's make some corrections if we need to. Okay, so now we can actually fill in the answer and everything. So our answers here, we have our cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. The adjacent is 2 root 6, and the hypotenuse is 7. And then you just need to ask yourself, can I simplify that at all? And the answer is no. Okay, so that's, the 6 can't break down, and then the 2/7 here cannot simplify, so you're done. All right, then tangent is O over A. Our O side is 5, and our A side is 2 root 6. And hopefully you should say to yourself, can't leave it like that. So we're going to times by root 6 on the numerator and denominator. And we'll have 5 root 6 over 2 times 6, which should give me 5 root 6 over 12. Okay? I'm going to make this a little smaller just so I can fit the other stuff. Okay, so I hope that might clear up any misconceptions we had with that homework, okay? This one was the one that was missed more, though, number 8. So I think the biggest thing what some of us messed up on is if we messed up the radical, unfortunately that does mess up all of the answers, so just be really careful. Okay, so let's do tangent. So tangent of 7, the first thing we need to do is put it over 1, like to make it a fraction, and then tangent is O over A. Okay, so O goes here, and the A goes here. Now, this is unlike the other one because I gave you both legs, so when I do Pythagorean theorem, I'm going to put 7 squared plus 1 squared. Okay? So that's 49 plus 1 equals c squared, so 50 equals c squared. And then, again, you can break this down. So 50, the perfect square that goes into it is 25. And it's 25 times 2. And then the square root of 25 is 5, and the root 2 stays there. Okay? Radicals is something that just doesn't go away. You're going to see it a lot. You'll see it next year in Algebra 2. So just make sure that you continue to work on that. I understand why that might be why you miss this problem. I know a lot of us miss the problem because of that right there. Okay? And so now we need to find the other two. So since I gave you tangent, we need to find sine and we need to find cosine. Okay, so let's fill it in. So sine is O over H. Our O side is 7 and our H side is 5 root 2. that's a no-no, so we need to times, and so we'll have 7 root 2 over 5 times 2. Remember, bring this over and then that. Again, some of us forgot that step. Okay, so that's what you should have there. Then cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Oops, I should write the A and H like all the others. All right, so our A is 1 and our H is 5 root 2, and then we're going to times by root 2. Okay, so that's root 2 over 5 times 2. Ooh, that was ugly. So it's root 2, excuse me, root 2 over 10. A few of us got it right, so that's excellent if you're some of those few, but not enough, okay, for me to feel comfortable just putting up the answers. So see if you can make your corrections. If you need to go back and look at anything, please do so. Okay, now we're going to go back to our notes and finish our notes, okay? So this is something I tried to really focus on yesterday, trying to show you that the sign, like if you look up here, the sine of A and the, cosine of B are the same, and then the cosine of A and the sine of B are the same. So basically, if you have a sine, you need a cosine, and if you have an A, you need a B. So it's like they're opposite angles and they're opposite words, if you will. Well, there's a name for this, okay? So this is called, the trigonometric function of the complement of an angle is called a cofunction. All right, so sine and cosine are cofunctions of each other. So it says, write sine 58 degrees in terms of cosine. So we're going to, because I have the word sine, I know I'm going to immediately write cosine. And then on the next one, because I have cosine, I know I'm going to write sine. So you have to have like different words. And then notice that the angles are not the same. You're not going to put 58 degrees in here, okay? If you think about it, we said if you have a triangle, and let's say this one's 58 degrees, it's the sine of this one and then the cosine of this one. So we need to figure out what this angle is. And what did we say the sum of these two angles always is? Well, it's always 90. So you're just going to do 90 minus 58. But like we can actually do that, right? So I'm not even going to leave it that way. I'm going to write 90. Whoa, that was set on a big setting. Sorry. All right, so we're going to actually write it. So it's going to be cosine, and 90 minus 58 gives me 32. Now, we can double check ourselves to make sure this is correct, okay? So this is what I want you to do. I want you to go to your calculator, and I want you to type in sine 58. That was the, that was the original problem, and you get 0.848, blah, 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 blah. Let's type in what we think the answer is, cosine 32. And what do you notice about the two answers? They are certainly equal to each other. So that tells us that we've done it correctly. Okay? So let's try another one. If we have cosine, we know we need sine. It's the opposite word. And then we need to do 90 minus 24, or the complement of 24 degrees. So 90 minus 24 is 66 degrees. And now let's check ourselves. Okay, so cosine 24, let's see what that equals. And then let's do sine of 66 and see if we get the same thing. Yes, so we did it correctly. All right, why don't you try these two really quickly? Pause the video. Okay, so you should have had cosine in that blank and sine in that blank, and then we're going to do 90 minus 78, which is a very small angle, but that's okay, 12 degrees. And then we're going to do 90 minus 31, and so that is 59. Okay. All right, so that's all we're going to do about cofunctions, because I think that's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. And the nice thing is, if you forget, you can kind of try things in your calculator until it works, you know, trial and error. Okay, so you really have to have your calculator for the last part of this lesson, and we always want to make sure our calculator is in degree mode. Most of you, if you have the TI calculator like I have, or if you have a Casio, you should see like a DEG in the bottom of the screen, or you should just see that the DEG is for the TI calculators, and then you should just see a D if you have a Casio. You may need to Google how to change that if it has a R or a rad. Okay, so we always want things to be in degree mode. All right, so let's just first get a little associated with the sine, cosine, and tangent buttons in your calculator. The nice thing is you literally just type the buttons like you're going to read them. Okay, so when we type sine 48, we're literally just going to type that. So hit the word, I'm going to clear this. Hit the word sine, the button sine, and then you're going to put 48, and then you're going to put enter. And I think it told us to round to 2 decimal places, right? So it'd be 0.743. And does the 3 tell the 74 to stay or bump up? And it tells it to stay, so 0.74. Does that make sense? So it's just pretty straightforward. You're just typing in the calculator. So tangent 22, hit enter, 0.404. What does the 4 tell the 40? It tells it to stay. And then cosine 52. 0.615. And what does the 5 tell the 61 to do? It tells it to bump up. Remember, if it's 5 and above. All right. Okay, so that's just kind of the basic introduction to the calculator. We're going to use that calculator function more in just a second when we get into like the meat of why all of this is important. Okay, so the last thing, kind of like pre-work before we get to the actual meat of the lesson, is how to solve equations. Now, if I am trying to isolate A, this is like what you learned in middle school. How do I get A alone if this was divide by 12? So what is the inverse operation of dividing by 12? Well, it's multiplying by 12. Okay? So we can multiply by 12, and 12 times sine 20 degrees equals A. And then we literally can just type that into the calculator, okay? So we're going to go 12 times sine 20, like that, and hit enter. 4.104. Okay? You could put the 0 if you wanted to, if we're rounding to the tenths. Notice I put the squigglies because I cut off part of the decimal, so it's just an approximation. So whenever your variable, your unknown, is in the numerator, you're going to end up multiplying. Okay? So we multiplied here, and it's because the A was in the numerator. So now what happens when the A, or the variable, is in the denominator? Okay? Well, there are multiple ways that I can teach you to do this. I guess I'll show you what I think is probably the easiest. Okay, so there's this rule in math that says if you have ratios or fractions, so let's make this guy a fraction by putting a 1 on it. You can do cross multiplication. Remember, we've done that with like proportions earlier in the year when we did similarity. But there's another rule that says anything on the diagonal can switch places. So in order to get this B isolated or B alone, I'm going to switch the cosine 80 and the B, their spots. So now it's going to be like this. Does that make sense? Now, do I really need the over 1? No. So I'm going to like mark this out. You don't really have to have it. And so it'll be B equals 25, and then that bar means divide, right? The fraction bar, cosine 80. So let's type that in. So 25 divided by cosine 80. And let's hit enter. And that's a big one, but that's okay. 143.96. Uh-oh, what did I just hit there? Not really sure. Oh, I must have hit that at the bottom. And now I've lost my train of thought. So it was 25 divided by, what was it, cosine of 80? Okay, sorry. 25 divided by cosine of 80. and then we can hit enter. So 143.9, and do y'all see the 9 is going to make the 96 round up to 97. 143.97. Okay, so here's the moral of the story. I'm just going to go ahead and tell it to you straight up. If your variable's in the numerator, you're going to be multiplying, like this example here. If your variable is in the denominator, you're going to divide, like that right there. Okay, so you're either going to be multiplying or dividing each time, and it just depends on where your variable is. And I'll keep reminding you of that as we go. All right, we are finally to the good stuff. Okay, so the last part of this lesson that is like the most important thing probably you're going to learn is how to actually figure out what a side length is, or an angle is. And we're going to do that by setting up a trig equation and then solving it based on what we just learned. Okay, so we have some angle, 33 degrees. According to this, so basically instead of a theta now, I've told you what the degree measure is. Okay, so according to this 33, this is the opposite leg, so we would call that O. And then of course, across from the right angle, this is called the hypotenuse. Now, we do not know this side, but we don't need it. Okay, so that's actually just going to stay blank. We know it's the A, but that would get confusing for how we're going to solve this. So whichever side has nothing, just leave it blank. Okay, you don't have to put anything. So when I see an O and when I see a H, it helps me determine which trig function I'm going to use. So in SOHCAHTOA, which trig function uses O and H? Well, it's sine. And so that helps me write my equation. Okay, so based on what's given to me, I'm going to write the trig function. Whatever comes out of the trig after the trig function is the angle, so 33 degrees, and then we put our equal sign, and then we write it in the order of which sine goes. So sine goes O over H, where our O side is X, so it goes on the numerator, and our H side is 20, so it goes on the denominator. And so now you ask yourself, is the variable in the numerator or the denominator? Because it's in the numerator, we're going to multiply. Okay, so we want to get X alone, so we're going to get rid of the divide 20 by timesing by 20. Okay, and so then X is approximately, and now we just type this into the calculator. So 20 times sine, did I do that right? Yeah, sorry, 20 times, I'm looking at my notes and I had it looking at the wrong spot. So 20 times sine 33. Okay, and now let's hit enter. All right, so 10.89. And so what we did was we just figured out how long this side length was. If the hypotenuse is 20 and your angle is 33 degrees, then that side has to be 10.89 units, whatever the units are. Okay? All right, let's do a few more. So, looking at this next example, we're going to identify the angle, and then we're going to label the sides according to that angle. So, we know this is the hypotenuse. And now what would this X be? Would it be the opposite or would it be the adjacent? Well, the opposite would be that way. We don't need to label it. So this one is the adjacent. Okay? And so you need to ask yourself, in SOHCAHTOA, which trig function uses the A and the H? And that's cosine. So that tells me how I'm going to write my function. So cosine, and then you write the angle, 35 degrees, and then you write A over H. So my A side is X, my H side is 10. And then is this multiply or divide? Well, because the X is in the numerator, it's multiply. So we're going to multiply that 10 on both sides. And so now that's what we type into the calculator. So 10 times cosine 35. Oops. Okay, and you should get 8.19. And you don't have to worry about units right now. We're not doing like a real world problem, so you can just leave it like that. Okay, let's do another one. colors. Okay, so according to my 48 degrees, this 6 would be labeled O because it's opposite, and the x would be labeled the hypotenuse. So which trig function uses the O and the H? And that is sine. So I'm going to write sine and then the degrees, 48 degrees, and then your equal sign. And sine is O and then H, so O and then H. All right, so this is one where the the variable's in the denominator as opposed to the numerator. So this is where we want to switch these to their places, okay? So x equals 6 over sine 48. And so that means we're going to divide. And we're going to type that right into the calculator. So 6 divided by sine 48. Okay, so it's really not that hard because you just rely on the calculator, but you've got to know how to type it, whether it's multiplying or dividing. So 8.07, because the 3. 8.07. All right, let's do a couple more. I think you're probably, hopefully, starting to get the hang of things a little bit. We'll see. All right, so according to this, now this 39 is really small, but it's in this angle right here. So our x would get labeled O, and notice the hypotenuse would be this one, but we're not going to label that, so this would be the A, the adjacent, okay? So which trig function, I'm going to rewrite SOHCAHTOA again. Which trig function uses A and O, or O and A? It's here with tangent. So we're going to write tangent 39 equals, and then it goes O and then A. So O and then A. And then you just ask yourself, multiply or divide, and because our x is in the numerator, it's going to be a multiply. Okay? So let's type that in. 65 times tan 39. 52.64. The hard part about this is not really a great way to check yourself. So you just kind of have to make sure that you're confident in labeling your sides. Okay, let's try a couple more. So according to this 55, oh, and if you feel like you're catching on, you can just pause the video, try them yourself, and then check yourself, okay? All right, so we have our O and we have our H, so that's going to be sine of 55 degrees equals our O over our H. Okay, so that's divide. So x equals 121 over sine 55. Remember, they just switch places, these two. You can think of this as an imaginary 1 under here, and then that's how you're allowed to do that. All right, so now we're going to type in, remember the fraction bar means divide. So 121 divided by sine 55. 147.71. Okay. All right, let's keep on trucking. All right, so according to this 42, this x would get labeled O, and this 75 would get labeled H. So is it the same as the last one? We'll see if it's kind of, it seems like it might be similar. So sine of 42 degrees equals O over H. And the reason I'm doing the x over the 75 is because of this order right here. The O comes first and then the H. Okay? And then it's not like the last one because this is a multiply problem. So I always like to put the number in front, although you could put it behind it, but I like to put it in front. So 75 times sine 42, 50.18. Okay. All right. Then, according to this angle, this is our H side and this is our adjacent side, so that's cosine. And then cosine goes A first, and then our H side. And because the X is in the numerator, we're going to multiply. All right, so we're going to do 46. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, making sure I have it right. 46 times cosine 38. That's 36.25. All right, and then according to this 52, our 8 is our O side, and the X is our adjacent. This would be our hypotenuse, but we don't need to label it. So that's TOA, tangent. So tangent of 52. All right, then the order goes O first. So our O side is our 8. And then our A, so that's X. And then these two are going to switch, so it's going to be divide. Okay, so let's type that in. 8 divided by 1052. And we should get 6.25. All right, and then this last one, which would kind of looks like a challenge problem, don't let yourself get overwhelmed or worked up by it, because all I want you to do is like ignore one of them, one of the variables. So if you have two variables, just pretend like it's not there. All right, so now let's work it just with the 5 and the X. Okay, so according to the 32, the 5 is the O and this is the H. Okay, so which trig function is that with the O and the H? All right, I think I'm still recording. I hope I am. So with the O, my sister's calling. So that's sine of 32 equals O over H. Okay, and that's going to be divide. All right, so we're going to do 5 divided by sine 32. And that is 9.44. Okay, now when I go to do the other problem, I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to ignore or pretend like this isn't here. Okay, so I'm going to do now I'm going to do A and O, right? So according to this 32, this is my adjacent side. So now I'm not going to use the same trig function I did for X. I'm going to use O and A, which is tangent. Okay, so if there are two variables, just ignore one and use, the two sides that you can. All right, so the tangent of 32 degrees equals, tangent is O first, and then A. And again, that's going to be where they switch places. And then we can type that in. So 5 divided by 1032. 8.00, which is just going to be 8. All right, so I went kind of fast, but I really think that after these several examples, you'll kind of catch on. If you need to rewind and watch it again, you sure can. This is going to be something really easy to look up on YouTube also if you'd like to hear it from a different person. You can just type in solving trig equations. All right, so here are your homework problems. We're going to do these here, so 9 through 17. 9 and 10 and 11 are like the cofunction thing, so you can use your calculator to kind of try those. And then 12 through 17 are like what we just learned. Now 17 is a little bit of a challenge, but I'm gonna let you, and maybe even 16, but I think y'all can handle those if you think maybe back to some old stuff. Okay, so that's a hint, like prior to this week. All right, good luck. Please submit the form when you finish. All you're going to have to type in is the answers, okay? So you're not going to have to type in any work. It'll just be a plain old, 3.55 or something like that for 12 through 17. For 9, 10, and 11, you're just going to write like sine, cosine, or tangent in the blank, okay? All right, y'all have a great weekend.